But for me, I'd much rather have the guy wearing 16 on offense than Matthew Caldwell at quarterback for a reason. All right. The other topic that I want to talk about tonight, I think is a little bit further afield, but go with me here. I wrote this piece for foxsports.com where I was asked to take into account some things about what has happened with LSU, what's happened with like the dozen FBS coaches that have been fired before Halloween, including Billy Napier at Florida, James Franklin at Penn State, who Ohio State is going to play Saturday, and of course, Brian Kelly at LSU. And originally the thought was, I'm going to write about why I believe Ohio State is the best head coaching job in America. But as that was becoming more commonplace everywhere else, I don't like to go with the trendy topic unless I have no choice, and I almost always have a choice. And I never want to give the audience something that is obvious, something they could probably see themselves. But this time I got to look to thinking about it, and I would say, what if you don't try to build what Indiana has built? What if you don't try to, play the lottery with donor money, hit reset, and go find a Curt Cignetti, which I feel, and I wrote this in the piece, is a lot like trying to hit a bullet with a bullet from 1,000 yards away. You might do it one time, but it's not really good policy for you to continue to keep trying to do that as a means of success. Your rate is just not going to be that good. But I also need to take into account, or you need to take into account, it took Indiana more than 100 years to get good. More than 100 years. This is the losingest program in FBS history, period. They still are. Even with Curt Cignetti being undefeated this season and being a two-loss team last year. They're new money. And that's not a put down. That is to say, you would not be able to sustain that if it's not him. And think about what Indiana had to go through to get to Curt Cignetti. Then you think about what Colorado did, which was hire a guy that can get them a profile raised high enough to get them to the Big 12. That's what's missed about Deion Sanders and the hire at Colorado. Many people believe that he was hired to win games there. Yes, he was. He was hired to win games there. But the reason that Rick George wanted to do it when he did is because the Pac-12 was dissolving. And Colorado could very much end up on the floor because the football program that ain't been any good since about 2016. And that's not good enough to keep you in a Power 4 when it's shrinking from a Power 5. So you bring in a guy like Deion Sanders that can guarantee marketing, that can guarantee your name is around, and that can guarantee you can sell to television networks. And that is what gets you into a power conference. You have an audience and a base that wants to watch you and watch you on TV. This is why my alma mater, the University of Tulsa, is not a Power 4 school, right? And I'm going to pick on the University of Tulsa because it's my school. It's my alma mater, not because it's the smallest Division I program playing football, which it has been and it is. But it's also got like 4 times as many Pro Football Hall of Famers as Clemson. It just means a lot to have a football team at TU when you go through it. I mean, you think about some of the guys that come through there and you'd be shocked to know, Zaven Collins, Tyler Smith, my buddy Jerry Ostrowski, Drew Pearson, Glenn Dobbs, and keep going, right? Steve Largent. There's a long list there. It's just sustaining that over time means you got to have a lot of people that watch TU football. And had Deion Sanders been the head coach at at TU, you might have that. That's the reason I think that is to go. You also can't really do it the way that Oregon has done it, which is to have a big money donor that is willing to throw money at Mark Helfrich, at Chip Kelly, at Mario Cristobal, and at Dan Lanning, and make sure that you are always flush with enough cash to go be competitive and good and hopefully win the program's first national title. The smart thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. It is to build a program the way that Ohio State has. It's doing the numbers on this. Because I did a segment earlier where I was kind of getting at this, but this time I wrote it down and I got to see. So the number of games, or since Ohio State has started playing 10-game seasons, it has won 7 or fewer games in a season just a handful of times. I mean, first year with Woody Hayes, the last year with Woody Hayes, the last year with Earl Bruce, the last year with John Cooper. You got the Luke Fickell year, which you kind of sort of count, but not really because you don't get the national championship for the 12-0 season that Urban Meyer had. And that's it. That's it. That's all we're talking about. Usually, when you go under that 8-win threshold at Ohio State, you get your walking papers. But that's because the machine at Columbus works. It was built to work. It has always been built to work. And one of the things that I admire about Ohio State is many would say it's the best roster money can buy the last 2 years. Without taking into account, it really is going up the rough side of the mountain the way that they did this at Ohio State, because you got to remember, Ryan Day still hasn't beaten Michigan since 2019. You also have to remember they didn't get to play for the Big Ten championship in 2023, 2024, 2022, 2021 because they kept losing to Michigan, right? You also need to take into account that the Big Ten West was, when it was still the Big Ten West, was wildly light, right? We're talking about Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, all making the Big Ten championship game when Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State are all in the same division together. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense, even when it was East and West, let alone leaders and legends, which I thought was preposterous. But alongside that, take it into account what they were willing to do to try to get what they needed to win the national championship, which is if there's a market inefficiency to exploit, they're going to exploit it. I say this in a number of reasons. Like when people are saying, hey, I don't want to pay these athletes all this money. I don't like the way that college football is going with name, image, and likeness. Ohio State created not one, but two collectives, and said, is that all? Cool. And they're able to pay the guys that wanted to be Buckeyes and came back rather than go to the NFL. And they're able to add really important and one-time talent in Quinshon Judkins, in Will Howard, in Caleb Downs, and even Julian Sayin, who's contributing this year, Jeremiah Smith, all these to get them the 2024 national championship, even as they lost to Oregon and lost to Michigan and need to run the table to win the championship. It's not an easy thing to do, and it takes a lot of guts to keep sticking with Ryan Day, to keep sticking with that staff, to keep sticking with Jim Knowles, whose 3-year defense came in, and then Penn State tried to run the recipe back, but without the 3 years that Jim Knowles' defense needs to kick in, because they thought that the 4-2-5 they were running is going to be, just fine, just good. We got great players. That's not how it worked at Ohio State. Didn't expect it to work like that at Penn State. Now James Franklin ain't got a job because, well, they tried to run back the blueprint that they saw Ohio State use last year and not since 2021. Okay? There's that. I'd also add to this discussion, historically, Ohio State has exploited a market inefficiency. One of the reasons that I enjoy talking about the Buckeyes is because, I'm going to do the thing where I talk about black folks. Feel free to let it go or pack a lunch. Before integration, which is about 1970, we're talking about Ohio State recruiting black players to play there because they're good. Like Big Bill Bell comes to mind, defensive end, All-American, 1930s. Rudy Hubbard got to be the head coach at FAMU, was running backs coach for Woody Hayes at Ohio State. These things matter to me. The Archie Griffin, these things matter to me. Representation matters to me. Okay? So many times I get are you an Ohio State fan? Nah, respect. Respect. That's what I respect good. I respect winning. I respect, hey, if you're a mean cuss, be the same mean cuss with everybody you meet.